Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brijesh Mohan, and I head the large enterprise business for ITILITE. A very warm welcome to all of you to the second episode of our fireside chat series, Top Drawer Travel Talks. We really appreciate all of you taking time out this afternoon to attend this live session. Today's discussion is on exploring the new avenues of value creation. And our host today is Mr. Ashish Kishore, who's advisor to ITILITE and partner at Signature Journeys. Ashish was also previously the MD at Amex GBT and the country head at Donata. An alumnus of the Harvard Business School and with a career spanning more than 25 years, he's a veteran in the travel industry. So without further ado, I welcome our host for today to take over the proceedings. Over to you, Ashish.
Hey, thank you, Brijesh, for your warm introduction. Dear all, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the second edition of Top Drawer Travel Talk. For the benefit of our first-time attendees, it's important for you to know that we've named this series Top Drawer Travel Talks. As in these sessions, we will discuss topics of utmost importance in the domain of business travel with top industry experts and leaders. At the end of these sessions, we will be taking up questions and leave you with top tips and suggestions from our experts. Before I begin, please make note of a few housekeeping items. All of you are put on mute. However, you can continue to use the chat window to share your thoughts, exchange comments, whatever you feel like. During the question and answer sessions, please raise your hand and wait for your turn. We will then unmute you to ask your questions. In case we are unable to take your questions due to shortage of time, please write your questions in the chat window and we'll respond to you over the email. At the end of this session, please fill in the feedback form because that's very important for us to help improve into next sessions. And lastly, post the event, we'll be sharing the recording of this event with you. So with those out of the way, we all know that government is slowly easing out the restriction on travel. Business travel is picking up, which brings the need of the balancing act between the travel cost optimization and the concerns about duty of care. A huge part of optimization today depends on negotiation with various travel vendors or partners, I would use the word. But in the absence of a clear direction of volume and the direction of travel, this becomes a very tedious task. And then, of course, we all know that economy is going through a K-shaped recovery. Firms which are on the upswing or on the growth path have to adopt a very different strategy than the firms which are on a lower momentum of growth right now. Both have very different context of how the future will look like. Our guest today has been on the forefront of leading procurement transformation and driving strategic thinking to create value by implementing digital strategy for our Arvind Group. He has been on the forefront of this process. And today we will hear from him his learning during the pandemic and challenges that he has to face during the pandemic. Let me welcome my friend and industry expert, Mr. Bhupender Tomar. Dear Bhupender, welcome to the session. And why don't let's start with you sharing some of your experiences with our audiences and something about you so that we know a lot more about you. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Ashish and ITILITE. Pleasure to be here. First of all, I wish all our viewers a very warm evening. I trust everything around you is good and you all are taking good care of yourself. Well, a bit about myself to start with the professional front. I started my professional journey in year 2007 with India's largest conglomerate known as Reliance Industries. So I worked with Reliance close to 8 years on various projects, including infrastructure, education, corporate, digital service across states like Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. After this long stint with Reliance, it was a turn towards automotive segment, and where I had a stint with Hero MotoCorp, the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer by volume. It was a brief stint before followed by the stint with CNH Industrial, which is amongst the global leaders in capital goods manufacturing. Currently, I'm with Arvind Limited, trying to contribute in groups administration and facilities vertical. This is about the professional front so far. A bit about my education. So I did my grads and masters in commerce and PGDBA in human resource management, followed by an LLB. A bit about my interests. So I'm little inclined towards the fitness and a marathon enthusiast. And
nice.
I have participated in a few. That's about me. That's about me, Ashish.
Oh, that's wonderful, really. And a guy who's focused on marathon, which means he has endurance, and he has done law, and he is a HR specialist. Kind of a deadly combination we've got here. So yeah, that's very interesting. So I will start the session with you, of course, got a remarkable career. Congratulations. And would you share some anecdotes about the procurement journey in your firm, especially during the pandemic? What all did you face and how did you manage it?
Well, Ashish, when all this started last year, I'll remain specific towards the travel function in this conversation, as far as it will be possible.
That's okay.
Right. So when all this started last year, the job role of travel function was changed all of a sudden, right? So the travel came to a standstill. But a new avenue which was logistics. It was an activity came up which was to mobilize IT assets at the homes of the employees to enable them start working from home, right? So this was a challenge thrown, but also was an opportunity for the teams to contribute towards their business needs and ensure that business continuity in place. So this was a very fast change, right? And this was the time when cabs, which were ferrying travelers till some time back, all of a sudden they started transporting IT assets, right? Suppose this, a few months passed, travel was still on hold. And I guess by this time, organizations started to realize that this situation was here to stay, right? At least for some more time, right? And at the time, we were challenged to look at our systems, right? Our processes and policies and make them ready for a changed world, which was right in front of us. And also to start thinking about preparedness for the time which was coming ahead, right? So there was also a change in the thought process. So if we'll talk about the era before pandemic, so organization priorities were like maybe cost optimization with or maybe emphasize on the user experience. There were organizations which were evaluating technology options as well, which may be incorporated in their travel program. So, however, post pandemic, there is something which is a very kind of a word in fashion at this moment of time, which is called duty of care, right? So that this is something which required altogether a very different definition, right? And it was there as a top priority, right? And if we talk about the organization's procurement processes, so they also evolved around this during this period, whether be it travel or anything else. Ashish.
Understand. Wonderful. Duty of care obviously took precedent and will take precedent as we move forward. And as we discussed with our previous guest, digitalization has definitely gone ahead with the fast swing. But the second wave which came was really intense. And while we were preparing ourselves in the first wave, the second wave, the impact must have been very severe, which would have thrown the earlier plans out of the window. How did you manage that?
Well, I recall the situations, which were thrown up by the second wave, and we all know, how little and intense it was, especially in, some parts of the country, right? So this was the time when the focus was to extend support to the employees and their family members, right? So whether securing a bed for them in a hospital, supplying essentials, medicines, life support, whatever it is, right? So, however, when you're associated with the manufacturing setup, so one thing is given, and that is the show must go on, right? So which means while all this mess was happening around, the challenge was, how can you contribute to the business and ensures that your operations are not hampered, right? So this very thought process and need of the hour, it called for a very robust framework for preventive measures enforcement. Once again, right, which was already in place, but to how to strengthen that at workplace, right? And it has to be backed up by a die-hard commitment from the team, which ensured the execution of laid down appropriate behavior protocol at the ground zero, right? Other than this, the key steps like getting our employees timely vaccinated, it helped us a lot, right? So before the second wave, most of our population, so they were inoculated with the first dose of vaccine, right? And that has even helped us and building a great confidence amongst our employees also. Ashish.
Perfect. Thank you. Great insight. And this sort of sets the context to our topic of today. That while all this happened and organizations focused on the employees, a very important part of our business ecosystem or commercial ecosystem is our vendors and partners. And I'm sure, like any other organization, you would have taken care of them and worked around that. However, as we now proceed to a new journey into the new world, the previous value drivers of cost optimization, negotiation, long-term contracting, where you have vision to what your business P&L would look like, how those values have shifted. What are the new values? So the idea is to explore with you, how did those values shifted and gave way to new values? So some view on that, Bhupinder?
Yeah, so it's like, of course, when you very rightly mentioned, after this, there is a paradigm shift in the values, right? Like we discussed, the duty of care has superseded everything else at this moment of time, right? So, and still this remains the reality that organizations are exercising, cost conscious like never before. So duty of care is one part. This fact also cannot be taken given a back seat, that organizations are no longer the cost conscious, right? Still, so you mentioned about the new avenues, right? So probably the era which is we are moving towards this. Just before you answering this question, I would like to put some light on the consciousness on our part, right? Which is what we are thinking about the sustainability, right? So when I talk about sustainability, we were just discussing about the second wave, the impact of second wave, which was created by the second wave. We have seen ourselves, our people gasping for the oxygen, the life support, right? So I believe this is the time for us, for organization, to start thinking consciously about it. It's like so this is a question which I'm throwing at you and to all viewers, right? So what kind of world we are trying to, or we are planning to hand over to our coming generations, right? So are we really getting conscious about the carbon footprints or the carbon emissions, right? Is it something that the increased temperature, the causes of the news about the global warming, is it really a cause of concern for us, right? Or hearing about the melting of glaciers is causing a concern for us, right? And if the answer to all of them is yes, right, then what is our plan? What is our action plan for it, right? So of course, everything, whatever happens, now onwards, the time is really high. We need to start, keeping it around the sustainability, the sustainability thing, right? Whether it is, there can be so many ideas. There will be different ways for organization to do it. So now we will touch base on the new avenues which have opened up, right? So probably, digitization is need of the hour, right? Employee experience is another one, which has taken a very different meaning altogether, right? So, and there is a priorities shift, so earlier when we talk about this was a cost optimization, or maybe some little about the user experience. So now the world is moving towards so there are new challenges in front of the world right now, right? And we need to have a solution for those challenges. So dynamic and flexible policies, how it can support our travel program, right? Whether it is a need of the hour or not, right? Do we really rely upon a model which is, totally human driven, right? So it's like person dependent. Do we really see that kind of era going forward? Probably the answer would be no. So the answer remains in this very fact that technology is here to stay, and no organization can remain novice to this thought process, right? So if we'll talk about specifically about the avenues for travel program, it is going to be digitization, it is going to be employee experience, it is going to be the technology which is led by the human assisted, and global support remains one of the very consistent factor for it, Ashish.
Perfect. So you've kind of given all of us a very broad view of elements that needs to be considered while getting into a financial conversation with a partner or a vendor, or when you're designing your procurement strategy. While cost optimization remains one of the important ideology, but all the other aspects of sustainability, digitalization, user experience, duty of care, all these are equally critical.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with you that without these 4-5 different functions in line, you will not be able to create a framework where you create partnerships. And this leads me to a next question, that during the pandemic, organizations themselves faced a lot of cash flow issues, but they also saw the vendors really getting devastated, especially in the travel sector, right? Now, in that space, what are your views on the thought process where we used to say that these are my strategic partners and enablers? That was good to say, but what are your views now after the pandemic? How do you view them? Are they still your enablers, or do you want something more from them, or do you want to give them something more?
Okay, so Ashish, in my opinion, that time is really right when organization starts considering their service providers as strategic partners, right? So I've been a kind of believer of this thought process for many years now, right? And but these times are really strong. So, however, when I say that this is a kind of a requirement from the side of organizations, so it cannot be one-sided, So onus here remains on both the parties, right? Like we mentioned, it cannot be one-sided. So when there is some flexibility over the cost optimization, standalone factor is concerned, service providers, they're also required to step up in value addition offerings, right? Rendering higher flexibilities, a very agile and a dynamic approach which can cater to the changing needs, right? And needs everyone of us know that they are changing really at a fast speed, right? So, and if we'll talk about what it has done after the pandemic, so I must say that it has only cemented this thought process, right? And I firmly believe that the post-pandemic consideration related to travel for organizations will no longer be only cost optimization and process efficiency improvements. Of course, like we discussed, organizations are exercising cost consciousness like never before, right? But still, there will be a space. There will be a space for new priorities, like we discussed right now. Maybe duty of care is one, travel safety is one. Travel safety is, at this moment of time, it is topping the chart, right? But at the same time, we need to understand whether the service provider, when it is coming into that strategic partner category, whether they're able to extend that kind of expertise, and they're kind of able to partner with the business, right? Whether it is related to maybe digitization, what can be done for this one, if even maybe technology, of course it is going to be at the forefront, but what kind of human assisted support can be aligned with it, right? So it has to be a very it has to be a very healthy balance of these two, Ashish.
The point that you're making, Bhupinder, you just hit the nail on the head by saying that a travel partner can no longer just be a service provider. He had to participate strategically, not just a ticket issuance guy or somebody, an order taker. He has to be with you in that journey. So organizations who will not up their game in terms of customer engagement and understanding their customers' need and then designing a program to support. Of course, technology will be the key enabler, but a great program management built alongside this strategic conversation is probably the need of the hour from the vendor side. And rightly said, not everything can only be on the customer side. It has to go both ways. Excellent. Now, since we are now moving towards the end of our session, before we take question and answer, I would like you to share some key takeaways so that our viewers can really take some real thoughts after this session and implement them in their own organizations.
Okay. So it's like one of the takeaways is going to be consciousness towards the go green and sustainable initiative, right? So I'll part few of the ideas in terms of when we talk about the travel thing, right? So we know that all these flights, airlines nowadays, they're operating in bubble arrangements, right? There's very less we can think of, in terms of reducing the carbon footprints and the carbon emissions from that perspective. But I have something to touch base on the ground transportation, right? So with the new technologies coming in the form of EV, right? And people are declaring that this is going to be the future for it. How many organizations have planned for this thing to go for to start to become the pioneer, to lead by the example, right? To go for such kind of arrangements, even supporting their strategic partners in terms of ground transportation, to motivate them to bring such kind of vehicle, right? Of course, there's an capex involved in it, but there can be always a value addition model which can be discussed between the client and the service provider, or maybe you call it strategic partner for that purpose, right? So, and when we talk about, so this is one about how we consider this go green and sustainable, how we contribute towards this one. Then there is a priorities shift as well, like we discussed about it, right? So the new avenues are opening up in terms of digitization, right? So when I talk about digitization, I would like to elaborate little more about it. Yeah. So what kind of travel management platform? I'll go to that is one. Yes. So how digitized would matter? So few of the key characters of a travel management platform can be, whether it is fast and easily deployable, right? Number two can be with a very less, maybe nearly zero downtime commitment, right? Whether it is integratable, or it can be integrated with your existing enterprise systems, maybe HRMS or maybe your expense management system for that purpose, right? What kind of data storage system is being offered for that one, right? Whether it has the ability to customize and configure complex travel policies. When we talk about multinational environment, people will be operating from different geographies, different departments, different bands, right? So whether the system is capable of holding entire this thing together and bringing such kind of, when we talk about the approvals, right? So approval may be different from country to country, location to location, right? Whether the system is able to accept it, and it can help you in deriving the information which is required, and that also at the right time, right? So this is one. Then maybe we talk about this is the need of the time, is the real-time data analytics, right? A stakeholder specific real-time dashboard. It is something, it has something to do with my travel operation. It has something to do with organizations, employee safety program as well. At this moment of time, it has become very important for a corporate travel team to understand what kind of footfall and footprint their employees are having across different geographies, right? So that in the case of any exigency, they kind of remain prepared to if any kind of support is required to be rendered to them, right? So this can be one of this one. And of course, we have talked a lot about traveler safety. So I believe this is the time we start thinking very strongly about options like what kind of duty of care we are extending from the travel program perspective, right? So maybe ground transportation we talked about. If ground transportation, have we gone to that extent that my service providers or my strategic partners who are involved in ground transportation, whether their staff is vaccinated, right? Whether the kind of, the steps, the kind of COVID appropriate behavior it is expected to maybe performed at their level, whether they are up to that one, right? With the cars and the cabs, they are being sanitized, and the kind of monitoring, what kind of monitoring is happening. So saying is one thing. So in getting it executed with that rigor and taking proof of that one and submitting it to the client, that is a kind of when we talk about partnering, that's the kind of confidence which will come from this, right? So this is about this one, and probably we may think about tagging some of the hotels. We all know, and this would touch on the base of this something about the cost optimization initiatives as well. Like we understand that more and more organizations, they're very keen on it. So and we all know that the hotel industry is amongst the most impacted ones, right? So can we look at our deals with the hotels, maybe where we highlight few of the properties, we tag them safe to travel, right? And thereafter they're kind of partnering with us in terms of implementing the kind of protocol which we have designed and the kind of expectations which we have as far as safety of our employees is concerned, right? So that kind of partnering probably is required.
Bhupender, we're sort of running short on time, so I would excellent overview and takeaways for our people, for our viewers. I'm sure they would have they will have a lot to think about, and of course we'll take question and answers after this. So Brijesh, and if there is more Q&A, we will take that. But meanwhile, we'll as the questions are coming, just wanted to sum the conversation. Of course, we talked about that cost optimization and duty of care are the two top elements in any procurement conversation. The process to reach these two things is digitalization and partnership with the vendor, and sustainability and green initiatives and concern about the society becomes the foremost overarching theme of procurement now. So do we have a question, Team ITILITE? We'll take that.
Yes, Ashish, the first question would be to Bhupender. Excellent concept of where you mentioned service providers are today strategic partners to organizations, right? So building on that, the question was, how can you negotiate better with your travel partners at a time when both parties are trying to gain momentum in the post-pandemic world?
This has something to do with the cost optimization aspect, I guess, Brijesh. So okay, so we need to understand it, and very clearly. These are very difficult times, right? And we have already understood that travel and hospitality segments, they are amongst the which has suffered the most, right? So probably this is the time to support each other to sail through this phase. And the models for value creation with the dynamic model of engagement can be really helpful, right? So if I go pinpoint for answering this, what can be the opportunities? So probably, we all know that airlines, they're bleeding like anything. There is very less you can think of cost optimization from that aspect. But like I mentioned about the hotels, so volume is going to be the decisive factor what kind of deals you are going to have with hotels, right? But considering the kind of phase we are into, hotels are also, so they have a huge inventory and there's a huge OpEx cost, right? So there are partners who have kind of come with this thought process that they have reduced their tariffs, right? Provided you are able to commit some volume to them. So now how you will commit the volume, because volumes is also very, very uncertain, right? So, but still you can think of some strategies rather than to whatever volume an organization may have, rather than getting it spread into maybe 6 partners for that purpose. Can we bring it down to the 2 partners? So at least we are able to support the 2 partners, and we in turns we are able to get the better deal from them as far as our volumes, whatever volumes we have may concern. And probably one point related to ground transportation which people can explore. However, it will be very, very subjective on the geographies organizations are operating in. So this is the model called, if you talk about the ground transportation, if you talk about few of the cab aggregators, they'll offer you point-to-point fare model, right? So which can anytime beat this garage to garage model, which is very, very conventional. So this is another aspect I think organization can look up to.
Just to add on to the thoughts, while you're negotiating with the vendors, since both parties are impacted, it is always good to put the other value drivers on the table. That fine, we will negotiate price. You can't go down X percentage, fair enough. But you make sure that my employees, when they're traveling, the checklist required for duty of care is compiled by you. What Bhupender was trying to talk about the hotels. So fine, we will consolidate and give you volumes at X price. But at X price, you have to ensure that all your hotels is sanitized and my employees are safe. So bring the sustainability, duty of care, and the data-driven digitalization on the table when you're negotiating price. Demand that from the vendor in lieu of giving him price.
Sure, Ashish. Thanks. Thanks for the response, Bhupinder, as well as Ashish. Ashish, the next question is for you. So we spoke a lot about duty of care in today's session, right? So when it comes to duty of care, is there a global standard that companies need to follow, or is it pretty much specific to organizations?
So duty of care globally means different thing to different organizations. Manufacturing, aviation, these sort of high-tech organizations have already been very focused on safety of their employees. It's also depend on the type of function they're doing. And then there are service organizations where, duty of care primarily means the setup in which they are working. But now the context of duty care is changed worldwide, because you also now need to ensure the safety of your employee in his home as well. Because while we all say work from home, the fact is his home has become your office. So, and that's what Bhupinder was saying, the focus went into vaccination of all the employees, irrespective whether they were coming to the plant or not. So the context, of course, changed. There are global standards around duty of care by industry, but you have to look at your own industry and your own organization and develop a duty of care program. And I'm sure ITILITE would help organizations to create one when it comes to travel.
Sure, Ashish. Thanks for that. The next question is to Bhupinder, but it would be good if Ashish, you can also add to that after Bhupinder responds. So Bhupinder, the question is, how would the role of the travel manager change with the new trend of digitization?
Okay, so my take would be, Brijesh, that from a enabler, service enabler. So now it is an opportunity for a travel manager to play a very, very critical role, a role which is even more important, right? Which is to partner with your business, right? So at this moment of time, it has become very, very important for a travel manager, for any corporate, to number one, remain apprised with whatever is happening around, right? Because things are happening at a very rapid pace, right? So being a travel manager of an organization at this moment of time, probably you are expected to work as a travel advisor rather than a travel manager, right? So there will be so many situations where management will be looking up to you. And what do you suggest? We all know that travel is going to, it is very, very integral to any of the business. It is here to stay. It is just a matter of time, right? And so at this moment of time, the role has, from enabler to a partner to an advisor, it is changing. It is changing at a very rapid pace, right? So of course the role is changing, but now how you'll cope up with this one, how you'll manage with this kind of information, and technology is going to be, a good friend of yours. It will give you a good control over on overall scheme of things to you as a travel manager or on your travel program. And similarly, I would like to touch upon about this one, how connected you are, what kind of network you are into, right? So the news, whatever is happening, you should be amongst the few first person. It should be traveling to you rather than it is reaching to your traveler first, right? You should be in a position to guide them and to take maybe, if any maybe preventive actions or corrective actions is required for that purpose. Or for that purpose, again we come back to the duty of care. If any kind of situation is required, you can at least foresee that, and maybe you remain little prepared, right? I'll not say fully prepared, because pandemic has has taught us that, none of the tabletop exercise, none of the business continuity plan, can be a foolproof, right, for a situation like this, right? However, I sincerely believe that we don't need to, face such kind of any such thing ever again in the history of, or maybe in the future of mankind for that purpose. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I have nothing to add. I think Bhupinder has just been spot on. The role has changed from an enabler to an advisor, and travel managers or travel procurement specialists or anyone for that matter has to really up the game. So well said, Bhupinder.
Yeah.
Thank you
for that wonderful response. Thank you so much. I think we have time for just one more question. This is a little interesting question. Maybe Ashish can take it, and then if Bhupinder would like to add. How would the travel economy recovery, how will it shape up? What are the predictions around that? Will it lead or lag the general economy rebound?
The travel economy,
yes,
you mentioned, Brijesh?
Yes.
So travel economy will lag the general economy because, as I mentioned initially in the introduction, the economy is recovering in a K-shaped form. So there are certain industries which are obviously on a growth path, phenomenal growth path. We know about technology companies doing so well. We know financial, we know the stock market. All that is on the upper arm of the K. And then there are industries which are on the lower arm of the K, which are trying to revive, but that's a very slow recovery. Travel industry is part of that recovery because it is following the pandemic. Only when the pandemic will end in particular place or an infection numbers would go slow, that movement of people would start happening. So it will lag the general economy.
Thanks, Ashish. Great. I think we are almost at time, and I would request Ashish to,
Of course.
Summarize. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Bender. This has been a very interesting session, and I hope our viewers managed to gain some good insights from our conversation. Happy to answer any questions that may come via an email. Please write to us. But Bhupinder, thank you very much for your time, helping us with the preparation. And it's really good to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, ITILITE. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I wish all the very best to all of you viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you so
and
much.
Viewers, do join us for our third session, maybe sometime in 4 weeks' time. We'll get interesting conversations and new topics to discuss every month. So do keep waiting for our next invite to come in. Appreciate. Bye. Take care.
A request to the audience, as you leave the webinar, a feedback form will pop up. Kindly fill in your feedback. It will really help us keep improving our events as we move forward. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.